Welcome to episode number 68 of the River City Hardball podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Gibson, where we talk baseball right here in Jacksonville. And it's a great pleasure to welcome in one of the hottest teams in the Jacksonville area off to an 11-1 start. They've won 5 games in a row. The head coach of the Clay Blue Devils is Josh Persinger, and also Brandon Adams, one of his top pitchers as well. Guys, thanks for joining us. And Coach Purse, this has been a hot streak you guys have started out with. I know you and I had talked over the offseason about the talent that you guys had, but now you're putting it into action with this 11-1 start.
Yeah, it's been fun. You and I have talked a bunch over the last year, and these kids are great. I can't say their talent speaks for themselves, but what these guys do off the field, what they do in the off season, just everyone asks me how the season's going, and obviously the 11-1 is amazing. But I'm telling you, these are just it's an amazing group. These kids are amazing. They're good kids.
Brandon, welcome to the podcast, man. I really appreciate your time. You're coming off of a game that I think is one of the most impressive starts for a pitcher around this area. 12 strikeouts, a complete game, 1 hitter against St. John's Country Day. Take me through that, man. What was that like?
It was a good experience. The year before I had no hits, but I knew this year was definitely going to be harder because I know them last year, and I wanted to recreate the same thing.
With that performance, we are talking about that St. John's Country Day lineup, one of the most loaded teams around the Jacksonville area with tons of guys going to play college baseball. What was it like navigating that lineup and carving them up like you did?
It was hard at the start, but since we've played them a couple times, you get to know the hitters and what they can and can't hit. So it got easier as the game went on.
Brandon, tell me about your pitch mix in that game. What was working so well for you, and what was effective?
Mostly the curveball. It was on point. It got me ahead of hitters 0-1, 0-2. And then later in the game, started using the changeup more often.
Coach Josh, tell me about his performance in that game. What did you see from your perspective?
Yeah, he was just a competitor from the get-go. He's always had a lot of interest this summer, and in some of those games, he was up and down. And I think over the summer he started worried about things that he couldn't control. Any situation, 16, 17-year-old kid talking to a bunch of D1 schools here and there. And, the experience was amazing, but, sometimes we get caught up in the wrong things. So him and I had a long conversation in the off season about, hey, man, just go back to pitching. You let everything else take care of itself. And I really feel like that was kind of like, the first time this year, and not that he's had bad outings, but it was the first time this year, he went back to just doing what he does, and that's pitching. Probably the most impressive part about that was, I've got a professional baseball player called pitches, and Coach McQuaig. Those guys are working together, and they've called a ton of 1-hitters and 2-hitters this season. But Brandon was, and we give all our guys the opportunity to shake off. He was, hey, no, I got this guy. He was calling himself 3-2 changeups, curveballs. He really took control of that game. What we love as coaches, we kind of just sat back and watched, and just seeing him compete, seeing the fire in his eyes. It was pretty exciting for me. That's why we do what we do. Wins and losses are great, but just watching that kid compete and just kind of being in his element, I don't know, just getting cold chills thinking about it, reliving that night. It was cool to see him work.
Brandon, do you have a moment that you remember in particular from that game against St. John's Country Day where you went through and struck out so many guys? Coach said 12 strikeouts in a complete game effort. Is there any moment that sticks out in your mind, any at bat, any pitch that you can go back to?
Not really. I was just throwing. Don't really remember much.
Was there any specific hitter that you remember facing where you're like, man, this is going to be a tough out, but I'm going to see if I can get him anyway? You go through that lineup and they've got so many good players. Anybody in particular that you thought about like that?
One was definitely Brad Hodges. He was definitely one of the hitters I didn't know what to do with. So,
yeah, Brad Hodges is a very good two-way player going to Virginia. And Coach Persinger just mentioned a few moments ago just the interest that you've had certainly right now You are uncommitted, but I have to imagine there's increased interest. And what's that process been like for you, Brandon?
It's been good. Getting to know colleges, the coaches, the pitching staff, and getting to see how they do this year in baseball.
Josh, tell me about right now the interest that Brandon is drawing.
Yeah, I've talked to several different coaches, and some of the guys that I hadn't really talked to in the last couple months. In the fall, we kind of shut everything down, but the phone was definitely ringing again, and some of that sparked interest. Obviously, this year, he kind of he peaked a little bit later than some of the others, so he didn't get any of those early, freshman, sophomore year offers like some of the other guys got. And then obviously with the COVID and stuff, so some of the heavy hitters, they really wanted to see him in person, and we kept waiting. Well, it'll be November, it'll be December, January. Now it's indefinite. It almost feels like. So just kind of again, I try to keep him. We'll deal with all that, but just keep pitching, man. Just keep controlling what you can control, and that's kind of been our mindset for him.
Brandon, you're stacking up some terrific performances, the St. John's Country Day game being certainly one of those most recently. Has there been a breakthrough in your mind for yourself, whether it be a discovery of a new pitch, a new mentality? Is there anything that has given you this boost that you've got in the last few starts?
I think it's been more during bullpens and stuff, working on locating the ball more instead of just throwing it and seeing where it goes. It's helped me a lot during this.
And there's a difference between throwing and pitching, Coach Josh. You know that, and I think it sounds like he's figuring that part out pretty well.
For sure. And he's growing up, and in talking with the coaches, I couldn't brag on Brandon more. He's a good kid. I tell all the coaches the same thing. He's not a guy you're gonna have to worry about, going out and partying or anything like that. Maybe playing video games too late or something like that, and go to bed for school. But no, he's just a good kid. And I think he's maturing. He's growing up. He's starting to understand his body. He was 5'11" when I met him, and I think he's grown like 2 or 3 inches a year. He's starting to fill out. He was about $160 a year ago. Now he's pushing around 200. So, jokingly, I always just tell everybody that he was my baby giraffe. He looks like a giraffe just coming out of the womb, and doesn't have legs just yet. And he's starting to fill out, and he's starting to really take control of his pitches and his body, and more importantly, the mental side. Just seeing him. He could always pitch, but seeing him, take control of a game against, like you keep alluding to, St. John's. I mean, they're well coached. That's a, top to bottom. That's an amazing team, amazing organization, program. They're gonna go far. And Brandon had a good night against them, and even the Bulls game. Bulls has been, they've been relevant for as long as I, even when I was playing at Clay. The Bulls, that was the elite baseball school in North Florida, and it was and still is and probably always will be. And you lose 1-0 to that program that Boz runs. That's probably equally as impressive. The difference between those two games is one swing. Unfortunately, it didn't end the same way as we wanted to. We didn't get the hits. Ballmeister was amazing that night, but those are back-to-back really good outings against two really, really good teams. So, he's competing with the Hodges that are going to Virginia and Ballmeister to FSU. So, he's competing with all those big names around here.
Brandon, is there part of you where you do match up and you go pitch for guys that are going to Virginia and FSU and those kind of places? Is there part of you that says, man, I'm right there with these guys. I can stack up and match these guys pitch for pitch. Is there any part of you that thinks that way?
Yes, sir.
Does that motivate you any more than anything else? I mean, does that kind of fuel you a little bit?
Yes, sir. I like to think that way, because if I think I'm better than them, I have more confidence, and then it leads into the game.
Brandon, is there any we talk about the game that you had against St. John's Country Day, but is there any other performance that you can point back to this year that's maybe been a favorite performance that you've had this year so far?
Probably against Trinity.
Tell me about the game against Trinity.
Well, I know while Coach P's been the coach, we haven't really beat them before. So, it was a big game going into it. And I just came off not so good outing against Baker, but I came back and I shut them down.
Josh, tell me about that game against Trinity.
Yeah, he kind of alluded to the Baker game. He was kind of lights out through the preseason and his first outing, and then the Baker game. I think the 7, 8, 9 guys got on a fluke hit. Guy stuck the bat out down the line for a triple, and then next thing we know, like you blink your eyes and it's 3-1. We're losing. And I think he retired the first 6 batters. No one had touched first, so it was a little bit of adversity, and he bounced back from that, and then we still ended up winning. Like I tell her, it's high school baseball. If you give up, you give up 1, 2, 3 runs in a high school game, you should probably expect to win that game. So our guys can't be perfect, but went back to the bullpen, worked on some things. Sometimes he starts rushing, and just being able to to bounce back. And that's everything this whole season, especially this year, because rankings kind of matter, but they really don't. So it's all practice for the end of the season. Like Tom Stan, I learned that from him when I was a young coach. Like, you could be 0-25 and win a state championship. So it's learning curve, and that's what we really try to do as a team and individually is, okay, yeah, what did we do in that game? Even he could tell you, I've probably yelled at him more in the 9-2 wins than I have the 1-0 losses. It just really kind of depends on what happened in that game. So see him bounce back, and like he said, I never got a chance to beat Gil. Trinity has always been on our radar, and we found a way to get past them. And I feel like if we played them 10 times this year, it'd be 6-4, one way or the other. It's a great program. Again, Murph is doing an awesome job over there. So being able to put one in the win column was nice. And like I said, Brandon, we just kind of rode his performance, found a way to get some runs, and he shut him down.
Final few moments here with Josh Persinger and Brandon Adams from the Clay Blue Devils out to an 11-1 start. They've won 5 games in a row. Brandon, tell me about the start, man. What's it like playing for a team that's on such a hot streak right now?
It's fun and all, and it's easy to pitch when you have a team who can put up runs behind you, and the fielders aren't going to make errors, and you just have that confidence inside of you, and that just helps us.
Brandon, what's your favorite pitch to throw?
I would say the curveball.
Curveball, and is that something that you've really worked on recently? Is that a pitch that's been working well for you?
Yes, sir.
Josh, tell me about his curveball.
He's kind of always had it. He lost it a little bit this summer, and I think you go to those perfect game tournaments and you get so caught up in lighting up the radar that, again, you forget to pitch. I think his velo's been pretty good this year. I know what the people tell me, but I kind of make a rule. I send an email out to all my parents and say, there's no radar guns at our game. There shouldn't be people relaying the radar, the mile per hour back to our dugout, because that doesn't get outs, So I think he tried to kind of throw through it this summer, and he didn't realize that was his best pitch. They already knew he could throw hard. They wanted to see him pitch. So he's went back to that, and he's kind of got a higher arm slot. So kind of went back to that 12-6, and I think I showed you some footage that I wouldn't want to try and hit that thing. Don't tell him I said that, but it's pretty deadly.
Brandon, sometimes guys can certainly get caught up in numbers on the radar gun. With throwing that curveball, I mean, you're keeping guys off balance. That's got to be a good pitch up your sleeve a little bit to keep these guys off balance.
Yes, sir.
Brandon, final moment here. Is there anybody that you model your game after, whether it be somebody you grew up watching in Major League Baseball or a friend or anything like that? Anybody that stands out to you that you've kind of shaped your game after?
Not really.
Josh, is there anybody that he reminds you of?
He's kind of his own guy. He's just, I try to compare him. Sometimes I'll compare him to, we've been fortunate enough when Coach Thompson was the head coach, he coached Dane, and I was his assistant, Dane Dunning, who was obviously in the big leagues, and Kyle Bird, who did some time in the big leagues, and Andy Tolkien. And, at the same time, there's things that those guys did better than him, but at the same time, I feel like he's a little further along than them with velo, with command, and who knows how it's all going to end up. But just to kind of even be, I can tell you, I wasn't in conversations with guys like him You know, I threw 83. I thought I was a pretty hard thrower until I started coaching. But he kind of, just like I said, he kind of marches to his own beat. He doesn't really fit in a category, which is great. He just goes out there and pitches, and you know, just kind of shrugs his shoulders and, all right, let's do this. Hey, Brandon, you're pitching today. All right, cool. Cool. Hey, Brandon, you're playing short. You know, like, it doesn't matter what I tell him. He's just like, all right, cool. Which is awesome. As a coach, you love those guys.
Brandon Adams from Clay High School in Green Cove Springs out of the Jacksonville area. He is our DBAT Player of the Week for his performance against St. John's Country Day. Complete game, 12 strikeouts, 1 hit, and got the victory against St. John's Country Day. Congratulations, Brandon. Terrific performance, man.
Thank you.
All right, Josh, best of luck going forward, man. This 11-1 start. I know you guys are going to keep on working hard, and congratulations on the success so far, and best of luck moving forward.
I appreciate it, and as always, I appreciate everything you do for North Florida baseball, high school baseball. It's great, man. The kids love it.
Brandon Adams and Josh Persinger from Clay High School, we appreciate their time here on episode number 68 of the River City Hardball podcast, brought to you by our friends at 925 Partners Insurance and Collins Builders. Coming up later this week from Jacksonville University, Chris Hayes and ASUN Pitcher of the Week, Tyler Santana. They'll join us later this week on episode number 69 of the River City Hardball podcast.